Can I have everybody's attention, please? I'd like to call this utility board workshop in order. I'd like to welcome everybody here. Thankful you came. Does anybody have anything you'd like to bring before the board before we get started?
I would.
Yes.
I would like to say thank you to Loudon Utilities for putting those lights up on Carting Machine Road. I put up 2 new street lights, and it's much appreciated.
Did that solve the problem?
That did.
I noticed
Okay.
that this morning about
Yes.
5:30.
It's wonderful.
Thank you.
Right.
Appreciate you.
Appreciate it a lot.
Anybody else? Thank you again for coming. We appreciate it. First item we're going to talk about today is the purchasing policy.
Yes, the purchasing policy is a key component of our strategic plan. On the screen for everyone to view is the line item it's contained in. It's a little bit tardy, but still coming in close to on time. Contained in your packet is a draft of this purchasing policy. It's of course recommended by staff. There's no reinvention of the wheel here. We pulled heavily from other utilities, namely Clinton, and it will set parameters for how we are to bring competitive bidding into our procurement process.
Anybody have any questions about it right now?
Now, on page 19, on the multiple year contracts, do we really want contracts for 2 years and not evaluate yearly, or I'm just questioning that? We normally do yearly in most situations.
Well, I will point out that there's a number of exceptions to the rule contained inside the purchasing policy. If it's a square peg that won't fit into a round hole, we are given some flexibility, and including the vegetation maintenance contract that we just bid, because it was potentially in excess of 2 years.
Yeah, there's, in the paragraph, it has latitude, I see, to move that way if so desired by LUB and also yourself. But I was really, I guess, curious how defined down it was. Was it going to be applied across the board on everything, or only on items that are of necessity to the utility that has 2 years?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's pretty open is what I'm getting at. To me, it gives a lot out. In your discretion, if you want to just do 2 years, you'll do 2 years. That's for you. And that's okay if the board's fine with that. I don't have a problem with the paragraph. I'm just, is that what we're going to do? My only question.
Mm-hmm.
Do we want it somehow to be revised to give that latitude in a more specific way to certain items? That'd be possibly the only way to do it. Because most everything, in my opinion, should be looked at annually in most cases, most contracts.
Well, the way that's written, it says contracts exceeding 2 years must be approved by the board. Now, is that something that you're going to do, you would do on the front end, or is that something you would do in the term of the contract?
At the front end.
On the front end, okay. Anybody else?
I'd like to get just a little response on my question from the other board members, see how they feel, if they care to respond.
I'm good with that 2 year, 2 feet.
You don't have a problem with the 2 years?
No.
Are you okay with it?
2 years, yes.
I feel the same.
You all right with it? Yeah, I'm good with it.
Director Farmer, I'll highlight that provision on page 19. I will circle back to our department heads and make sure that that's not going to be problematic in any way from a staff standpoint. And I'll bring that feedback to you in 2 weeks at your regular meeting.
I appreciate that. Okay. That's all
Anybody else have anything they might have seen in it? Okay. Next item is January financial reports.
As Finance Director Nicole Curtis is coming forward to present the January financial reports.
Hello, everyone.
Well,
We've got lots of financial information today. You have the January financial reports and then also our City of Loudon audit and the TDA annual report that was recently completed. And they are printed off because this represents a lot of blood, sweat, and accounting tears. And it's just something you want to hold very closely, but there's a lot of work there. We'll go on to the January financials. I'll go briefly over the net revenues for each fund. And we have on our dashboard up there, stay focused on the year-to-date totals. This is the electric department you're looking at. You can see we're ahead budget-wise on our net revenues. And the graph below that represents the kilowatt-hour sales. We've talked before about how the weather is impacting our kilowatt-hour sales in the electric department. This is weather-related. It is also related to an industry drop during the months of November, December, and January. It's about 10 million kilowatt-hours each month difference. The good news is when you look at February, we already have the totals that were billed in February. We're back on track, so hope to be there. Numbers-wise, net revenue, you have total revenues. Gave you a new sheet. It's got a little bit different information in there. So from the top, you've got your revenues, less wholesale costs, then your gross revenue, and it makes it a little bit easier to compare what we can control in terms of operating costs after we've paid TDA. And so revenues are down 2.8% year over year, but our cost of TDA is down 3%. A lot of that is due to the long-term partnership agreement that was signed last August with TDA. That has been a savings of $306,000, which has helped us tremendously with this drop in sales. Also, when you go down to the operating cost line item, our operating costs are down almost 11% year over year. And a large portion of that, of course, is our tree trimming. So far, year to date, we're about $200,000 less than we were last year. That number may come back up just a little bit for February, but then we'll go from there. Looking ahead, we will have additional costs with the medical funding. But I do foresee that we will meet our budgeted net revenues of $440,000. Then we can go on to the gas department. Same story with the gas department in terms of sales. This is actually, 6-7 years almost? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, 7 years of gas sales. And you see how it peaks. It starts ramping up in October, November, peaks in January, and then tapers back off. But when you come to the far right-hand side, our past January, December, January are much lower than years previously. Again, it's weather-related. Director Farmer, did you have a question?
You know, explain it. I had a question on the operating cost.
Sure.
In the month of January, of course, from last year to this year, quite a differential there, but I found it to be in the maintenance category, under maintenance of overhead lines. Was a big impact there.
And the electric?
Yeah, the electric. What was the?
I should have said it before I started. January is unique because it is a 5-week payroll, and it is also, January is when our accrued sick time, vacation time, or accrued vacation time goes for the payroll system. So that makes January operating costs higher than other months.
Okay, well, I'm looking down into the maintenance item. No. You break down on page, third or fourth page down.
593.
Yeah, 593.
That is the tree trimming, and it's month over month, it's significantly higher. That's because it's a timing issue.
Okay, so last year was 24,000, this was 355, so you're saying it's just based on, we did more tree trimming this year?
It's the timing issue. What's happened is we started work maybe October, November, December. That work was completed, invoiced. It was put into a balance sheet account. It did not hit the income statement. Then all of that was closed out in the month of January, and that's when that $300,000 item hit the income statement. That's why it's a timing issue, and we are changing how that is handled going forward.
That's what I want to
There
hear.
you
Thank you.
go. It is the timing issue.
That'll work, yeah.
Year-
That really inflates one month and compared to the other months.
It does, and that's why, when you go back to the electric, that's why I try to stay focused on the year-to-date numbers, because
Yeah.
that timing
Right, I
issue
understand.
exists there. I did pull the totals for tree trimming year over year, and so far this year, we are $200,000
Yeah.
less than last year.
Which is critical math, as you said, to watch the year to date, but obviously when you look at a month basis, as most people do too, you have to see what's going on activity-wise too.
Exactly. I'm sorry, we can go back to the gas department now.
Okay.
Gas revenue, gas sales are down. In fact, total gross sales are down $861,000. The good news is our transportation sales, because of the rate adjustment that was done last year, is up $134,000. Our interest income is up $90,000, and our rent income is at $97,000. And none of those are our normal lines of business, but it's $321,000 that helps offset the drop in gas sales. If you flip over to the gas income statement, or statement of revenues, the first four items of revenue are sales revenue, and the next group down are the transport sales, rent, interest income. Okay, moving on from there to the water department. Let's see. Yes. You see the consumption here? I put it up, this is 5 years. The trend is the same every year. In our highest month, we treat and we sell about 300 million gallons of water a month. It doesn't change. The water department is facing significant capital improvements in the coming years. The only way to generate the revenue to pay for that is to adjust the rates to cover that cost. You can see there is no change in consumption. I do want to spend a little bit of time on that net revenue numbers. Our budgeted net revenue is $866,000, and you think, well, that's a lot of revenue. What's happening to that? But what's different about the water and sewer department from the gas and the electric is the debt. If you look at your financial statements, you will see that our water department has $14.9 million in debt. And each year, our loan payments, our debt service payments are $1.8 million. And that's why we have to keep that net revenue number up there. Again, accounting-wise, you get to back out the depreciation, but $1.8 million in loan payments each year in our water department. So that is on our existing $15 million worth of debt. To fund the next round of capital improvements is estimating $19 million in debt. Significant challenges, yes.
That loan, the loan that we did with the SunTrust, have we looked into shopping that to see now if there's better interest rates out there?
We have actually had some proposals from some other entities on other rates. The majority of our debt is actually through the SRF state revolving loan program. It's 2%.
Yeah.
Cheaper. And the majority of that $15 million is on that rate schedule. But you can always
But
be.
the one with SunTrust is like 3 something.
It's
3.5.
a bit higher. It is, that's correct.
Well, okay, go ahead.
The bulk of that is in the sewer, and the bulk of that loan is in the sewer department. I think the water department only has $500,000 of that particular debt, but we have had some proposals by other entities on how we could restructure debt and gain some savings there.
Does that look good?
It does. Before we can move that step, we need rate revenues that support additional debt service. Yeah. Because there's a cost of issuance, whether you borrow $1 or $10 million, there's a cost of issuance for bond counsel and everything that we filed, and so your interest savings would go away unless you bundle it together with another issuance. That's what we're looking at there. And we can go on to the sewer department. Same story here. This is consumption over 5 years. There's no change. This is our sewer usage. We treat 250 million gallons of wastewater each month in our highest months of June and July. You can see costs are same, revenues are same. Good news on the sewer side is we've completed the CMOS project, we've completed AMI, so there's no major debt to be issued in the coming years at this time. But that's where we are with the financials as of January.
On that makes me think of something though. We borrowed that money because we had to pay back the gas fund because, you know, that note was due. Now that it's been paid back,
It can be restructured.
well, we can turn back around, do the same thing again on the same amount of money that we've got borrowed with SunTrust, add a 0.5% interest to it.
Possibly. There was I will not say yes because I am not an expert in that. It is possible.
Okay. I just think that'd save us at least 1%.
And look at every avenue there is. I will say you have a hard copy of the annual audit. This is the city and utilities combined. If you go back to the page 105, that's when you'll begin seeing the electric individual utility funds. This is just a compilation of the numbers that we review each month. They're compiled and they're presented a little bit different format. If you go on over to page 120, you'll begin to see the debt that I mentioned on that exists for the water and sewer departments. Go further back, page 132 is our water loss report. I'll mention this because this is an Excel spreadsheet that generates a score. Our score was 87. The state requires that score to continuously be improving. I'm not sure if it has to go to 88 or 89. It requires investments to keep moving that score and keep it where it needs to be. And the very last page of the audit, almost the last page, discusses the need to address our work order system in the electric plant. I'm happy to report that we have made significant progress on that this year. It's what we talked about last month, the $20 million worth of work orders that have not been closed. They are getting closed, but it will impact our depreciation expense in the coming years. That's what I have.
Did you get that same finding in last year's audit?
We have had this finding. I actually pulled an audit from 1996 for additional information, and the very same finding exists in the 1996 report. So this has been an ongoing issue. We're making progress on it.
I have a question with the fellow board members here on the graph we're seeing here. Would you all like to see on all four categories cost over 5 years instead of consumption?
Okay. What would you like to see?
Well, I mean, I don't want to put you a lot of charts up. To me, consumption is a factor that you look at, but if you are driven by your cost first, then it'll lead you back to what your root cause could be, which could be consumption. But consumption, as you said, during the start of the chart, it's the same, and that's okay,
It's the same.
because we don't have major impacts going on. But cost can have variation in it
The
from
cost
month
to
to month
treat.
over, depending on the factors of equipment upkeep, process flows, all those things are important. And that can impact costs. So I would prefer, but I want to do what the board, I look at.
We have the information, and this is, we want to present it in a way that's most helpful to you.
I like looking at the expenses
Okay,
on
absolutely.
all of it. That's kind of that's what I like to look at, to see what we're spending and then you know what your pocketbook is.
Absolutely. That's great. We'd like to do that. Anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Next item on the board is water rate equalization.
And Director Farmer's probing question is a nice segue to this. What you'll see when we start examining those costs is you'll see your sewer department basically a break-even operation. you'll see an electric department with two annual peaks each year, summer and winter. And you'll see the other months, aside from those extreme weather months, you'll see the department operating at a deficit. The two peaks keep us going. In the gas department, there's just the single peak of winter. But what we'll also see when we add those costs is you'll see a water department under significant strain. And the lines will bear that out. And when I talk about this next agenda item, water rate equalization, phase 1, July 1, 2020, I'm going to be a bit boring and just read from the memo because we're talking about rate increases. And News Herald is here, and I think YouTube is watching in some way or form. And but I'm going to, so that the story is consistent and straight, I'm going to read straight from the paragraph. Another focus of the strategic plan called for long-term infrastructure budgeting. From this, the Water Department identified projects in excess of $20 million to be initiated in the next 5 years. Funding for these projects will require rate adjustments. It is the expectation of state regulators that all water rate classes contribute equally to the cost of a utility's water production. In order to recommend the most fair and most equitable rate adjustments, we contracted with industry experts, Jackson Thornton, to analyze system costs for each customer class. In order to equalize rates and contribution levels across classes, we recommend a series of rate adjustments consisting of 3 increases over the course of 3 years. The adjustments will bring all rate classes to a contribution level of 85% at the end of the 3 years. From there, we'll reevaluate. We'll update our cost of service study, evaluate the resulting data, and recommend further adjustments as deemed necessary.
Anybody have any questions?
I think it's self-explanatory.
Thank you.
There is a legacy issue associated with rate adjustments that can impact entities that we have these legacy agreements with, and I would like to discuss this with Attorney Fry and you at an executive session at your regular meeting in 2 weeks.
Okay. We'll do it. Anybody have anything else? All right, the next item on the agenda is the personnel policy, requested change.
Yes, I just want to talk through this with you. There's no policy document to put before you today. This request comes from the Gas, Water, and Sewer Department, John Davis, and this board passes policies. Sometimes the policies we have can cause harm or negatively impact our employees. I won't get into specifics of who, but I will talk in general terms about the situations that we're encountering. The main problem is the residency requirement currently in the personnel rules says if you work for the utility, you have to live inside the district. We have a utility employee in the Gas, Water, and Sewer Department who's inherited property just outside the district. It's, a nice, inexpensive place to live, but again, not able to take advantage of it because of the policy. We also have the situation where an employee has a spouse who has a great job in Knoxville and just simply desires to split the commute between the two workplaces. what we're asking is that this residency requirement be removed, and that as we bring people on in the hiring process, we simply hire based on one's ability to report and do the job. We would obviously have a Loudon first preference, two equally qualified individuals standing beside each other. We're always going to have a preference for the local. But having an ironclad policy of got to live here or else, it does cause situations that are problematic for our employees. In addition to that, I would ask that we remove the nepotism clause that's inside the policy, because, and it's a personal belief of mine, that someone, if the best qualified candidate for a position just happens to be related to someone in the utility, well, that's not really fair to our ratepayers, and we could use some best practices and common sense measures without this policy to bring on highly qualified candidates and place them in positions where there's not going to be that conflict of interest with the next of kin.
What do you think?
I'm for changing our boundaries of what we currently have.
Further, widen.
Yes, I do.
You're talking about residents?
Yes, the residency. Back in the day, in our younger day, they had where you had to live inside the city limits of Loudon.
Yeah.
Then they extended it out to utilities. In today's world, you got people live everywhere.
Yeah.
They don't just live in the current location here.
Well, I'll be honest with you, the only concern I have with that is the employee's been able to report to work in a timely manner.
Right.
I do have a concern with that.
What would be timely though? That's the key.
Well, and that could even change,
Right.
depending on what you want it for.
You look at our utility district now, you're looking all the way over in the Greenback area.
Yeah.
So you're looking at 35 minutes.
Yeah.
Or more.
So at least 45 minutes, you're looking at the.
And I hate to put a number on that,
Right. Right.
honestly, I do.
Right. You do. So basically, you just open it up and realize where the people live and what job they serve, you look at that situation also.
Anybody else have any thing to add or any suggestions?
I don't have anything with folks being able to live
Wherever.
as long as they can report to work and
Right,
get in
right.
with that.
And I don't
I
think
think
we
it's
have
common
anybody
sense.
that wouldn't.
The only other thing is on the nepotism thing is if, you might think that if you had two folks that were immediate family members, if they lost their family member, you're gonna lose two employees for the,
Several days.
yeah, for, that would be the only concern that I would have with, having folks if they were to be side by side.
Right. And side by side, we would do our best to avoid that scenario, because you wouldn't want a single crew or a single department, dependent upon a single family.
But how often would that happen?
Yeah.
You
Stuff like that's not
You wouldn't
all.
ever want it to happen, but, you wouldn't think it happened very often.
I support changing both of them.
We will,
I think we need to leave in the discretion of the personnel department and the manager to make the decision if he doesn't allow things like that, he'll control.
I got one question. If we change the policy, which I'm inclined to agree with you, Jim, what if in 12 years it's run amok, we need to rein it back in? How hard is that gonna be?
It wouldn't.
it'd be
Or
Just simply make a change,
the board at that time would make another
Yeah,
change.
I don't see a problem with that.
Well, I just, when you run into hiring and firing, you know, it can get sticky. You have to, that's one of the areas I think you gotta really, you can get yourself in a crack quick. All on your own, without anybody else.
And I believe that's certainly a role of the board to play as the oversight in factors of that nature. We're not supposed to allow that to happen.
I
I'll be
agree.
honest about it, I mean, we're just not. So that's mine, everybody else on the board to challenge to watch that 12 years from now and see how it's going. Or whoever sits in these chairs.
Right.
Or if you see it happening in an adverse way,
Yeah, reactive.
you can be a little bit more proactive rather than reactive.
Exactly. I agree with you.
I think we're up for the change.
Yeah.
We'll put some documentation together based on that feedback and bring it to you.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the surplus of the 1987 Chevrolet.
Yes, as part of the CMAQ grant program, we acquired certain trucks that are more energy fuel efficient. And the first truck to be taken out of commission per this grant requirement, which is to destroy the engine block and have it removed from service, is this 1987 Chevrolet, which we would just ask your permission to surplus.
I don't think we have a problem with that. Next item is safety report.
Yes, our Director of Sports Services, Jason Brown, reports one reportable injury in February.
Anything lasting?
No, sir. I had an employee injured his lower back while lifting a piece of equipment. His return to duty was scheduled for some follow-up, but never had follow-up.
Everything fine?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Good.
Is there anything that you might have done to keep it from happening again?
Yes, sir. I believe probably a little teamwork. I know 2 months ago I reported a back injury. That was a result of a fall. And I think this employee is one of our strong young men. Just, hey, I've got this. I'll put this piece of equipment out there. Strained his lower back.
That can happen very easy.
Yes, sir.
Sure it can. Next item on the agenda is the natural gas rate.
The market gas rate is not available as of the date of this meeting.
Okay. All right, that takes us to other, and I see nothing on the other. So, Ty, have you got anything else for us tonight?
No, sir. Thanks for listening. We appreciate your feedback, and we will prepare accordingly for your regular meeting.
Okay, thank you. Tim, you have anything for us?
I would like for us to look into our medical, which would have to do with proton therapy. And I'd like for us to see if we could get some numbers together, what that would possibly do if we put that into our policy. I think we need it.
Even before our committee comes together and reviews everything?
Well, that's liable to be in
I know, but I'm just
6, 8
saying,
months, a
You
year.
think that's gonna be too far down the road to look at?
That committee can take a look at it and move forward with it. But I think we need to go ahead and look at it
Okay,
pretty soon.
okay. Ty, can y'all get us some figures on that?
Yes, sir. We'll look into that and see exactly how that fits into the Humana network that we're part of.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Tim.
That's all.
Carter, you have anything?
No.
Gene?
I have a couple of things, see if we can take a moment discussion to update on the strategic plan. Don't know if we can make any decisions today, but we had a couple items that were near and dear to my heart that I feel like we really need to get on top of. And of course, that is the 3-year budget, and you kind of referred to that a moment ago, a little bit in a sense, I think. And do we give any thought to it when we can start looking, exercising that 3-year budget versus the one year we currently use?
Yeah, I'm going to get in trouble for neglecting some of these slides in your presentation. I'll go back to the water rate equalization 3-year phase strategy. That is in perfect alignment with the strategic plan line item. Nicole Curtis did mention in her financial overview the cost of capital improvements associated with the water department, approximately $20 million. This 3-year phased rate increase would help fund this. We would perform a cost of service study update. We have grant applications in place. There's financing options that are grant supplemented that are even more attractive than borrowing from the gas department. When I say that, I'm talking about rural development, forgivable loans. A percentage of the loan is forgivable. That's the best interest rate possible. Recovery by class, the 3-year plan would bring all rate classes up to 85%. As you can see, a number of rate classes are lagging behind the 85% figure. This would be a 3-step process to bring them up to that level. And this is the direct from the water cost of service study, another line item from the strategic plan, and the rate impact of those adjustments.
So, to answer my question then, I guess you're saying when we do the next year's budget, it'll be a 3-year budget based upon information you're collecting and gathering now, put into the format. We need to look at a 3-year budget, 3 years out, not just 1 year out.
Correct.
Okay.
In the water department, for sure.
Okay. How can we get a plan in place for all 4 departments? Is my question.
That's what we need to work on. But we started with the department that needed the most help.
Sure.
But we will work along those lines.
And I understand it's not an easy endeavor. It takes time. It takes a lot of people together, the right heads to put it together. But I think it's a great necessity because the future will be here before we know it. And if we don't be making some decisions based on a farther range looking out, I'm concerned as a utility that we'll be behind the 8 ball on some things. Maybe. So that's what budgets do. They just give you a plan.
Right.
So, okay. Well, I'm glad, appreciate you sharing that. I kind of knew those things were going on, but I wasn't tying it to the 3-year plan that we talked about in the strategic plan. I thought that was more for, this year, things happening in place. Now, of course, I'm speaking in terms of the capital projects as well, as we mentioned, capital plan versus also the budget plan, annual budget, 3 years for each, I think is what we referenced to. Okay. So then actually I had one more. What about the department head meetings monthly? How soon could we get those established?
Those are happening now. They happened top of last week.
Okay.
And it's basically me traveling to each department for conferences with the head of each department.
So it's not that, but I'm asking the department head having meetings with his employees monthly.
I see.
Yeah, I know you was having, but I'm speaking specifically about Bill,
Mhm.
meeting with his team monthly, bring them up to speed on stuff.
We had personnel management training for all department heads this past Friday. And if we ask to do something new or difficult, you know, we circle up together and we talk about it. And we heard from an industry expert Friday. His name is Bob Norton. You know, he puts some tools in our tool belt to help ensure when those meetings take place that they're productive.
Sure. Exactly right, you don't want to exercise the time and not for you.
That's coming up pretty soon.
Yes, sir.
Okay. We don't have a date in mind when that might get established, though, at this point.
What we'd like to put in the budget, we're still finalizing some numbers from Mr. Norton, a performance management software package that can be utilized by all departments. And it's very much a positive inspiration for employees in the department to be able to use this positive feedback system that can also set us up well for coaching and counseling, you know, if and when that's needed.
Okay. Sound like you're a little more in-depth than I was thinking we needed, but that's okay, if that's what works for everyone. I'm good with that, but I just am convinced communication, we can't get enough of that. The best we do, we'll still probably come short of getting sometimes everybody in the loop, you know? So that's why I'm convinced that those are the right guys. Your meeting's critical also, but their meeting is very critical, that their team hears them bringing forth the daily issues they're dealing with, and at least once a month, and say, this is what we see coming, be prepared for, you know, those type of comments, so. Just thank you for updating me here, and moving forward, all sounds like.
Yes, sir.
Anything else? So, Bob?
I'm good.
This meeting is adjourned.